All right, welcome back everyone to day 2 of the Be Ready Utah webinar, Spring 2021. We've had a great first session and we're excited for our second session to begin. So we'll turn this time over to our facilitator for this session, Teresa Hunsaker from USU Extension Service.
Thanks, Wade. Well, we are excited for part 2 of Jonathan and Kylene Jones and their information about building on the plan that they started with us in class 1. John and Kylene are the authors of Provident Prepper, a common sense guide to preparing for emergencies. They also teach self-reliance, emergency preparedness, and provident living on their website, theprovidentprepper.org, and on their YouTube channel, The Provident Prepper. John and Kylene invite everyone to join the ranks of the Provident Preppers and prepare for the challenges in our future. Looking forward to having them teach us and build on the plan right now. Your turn.
All righty.
Thanks, Teresa. And off we go. Welcome back to those of you who are joining us again. Welcome to those who are just joining us now. We're going to talk about, again, power outage preps, how to prepare now to shine without electricity. And you can see my cinnamon rolls there that I burned. Seriously.
That
Anyway,
was in our 90-day challenge, right? The bottoms tasted good, but the tops were history.
Yeah, and that's how we learn. So this time we're talking about heating, cooling, sanitation, and cooking. So let's go ahead and jump into this.
All right, we're going to start off with emergency heating. And this is something that is really cool that we don't have many of in our area, but it's called a masonry stove. And I'll talk about that again in just a couple of minutes, but they're really cool. So when it comes to emergency heating, the first thing that we need to do is to secure our home to prevent heat loss, right? So we want to block any place that cold air is coming in from the house. So you may want to insulate your windows. One of the things that I had discovered was that cardboard, while it's great at insulating, it makes the home dark, and dark is very depressing. So yes, you could use cardboard, but it's so much better to use something that you can see through, like bubble wrap or plastic sheeting. You could also hang blankets over the window. Anything to just insulate that, because your windows are a great source of heat loss.
Absolutely. Most walls are either R13 or R19, but a window is like an R1. So the flow of energy is immense through windows, so that they are a weak spot.
So make sure that the goal here is to keep the cold out and the heat in. We did a video not very long ago, like 3 or 4 months ago, but it's all about 6 life-saving tips to help you survive a winter power outage. And it went seriously crazy. We had so many views on it, and people from Texas talking about how that helped them. So if you're interested in that, definitely go to that video because it has a lot of helpful hints. If you don't take away anything else from this conference today, this tip about microenvironments is worth your time. So one of the things that is so important is that if you are having trouble staying warm, to create a microenvironment. Now, we learned about this from my friend whose parents survived the Alaskan earthquake. What had happened, the earthquake damaged their big old fireplace. You know how cold it is in Alaska, right? And they were able to survive because they set the family tent up inside of their family room, and they lived, for the most part, inside of that tent. And we've tried it. It works really well. So make sure that take this away, right? We're going to reinforce that. This is really important. And whatever you have to do to create a tent, it doesn't have to be a tent. You can throw blankets over a top bunk bed and, hang out in the lower one. You could put blankets over a table and have a nice little fort like you did when you were kids, right? You could use a big cardboard box inside your house, like a refrigerator box, and be inside there. The comments on that video that we pointed out talked about, we had all these people that had all these issues, and they were talking about different ways that they had been able to stay warm, and it's very enlightening. The other thing is you want to confine your heat, any emergency heating you have, to small areas. You don't want to try and heat your whole house. This is actually a picture that Courtney sent us from Texas. And this is exactly what their family did. They set up the tent inside their family room so that they could stay warm. And we mentioned this in the last class, but we turned off our power in January, many years ago when our children were small, just to see if we could survive. And we set up these 2 pup tents, one for the girls and one for the boys in the family room. And I went and slept in my own bed with John, with like piles of blankets on top of us. But I sat up in the middle of the night, terrified that my children had frozen to death. Now I put them to get in these pup tents in 0-degree sleeping bags, and they were wearing sweats or blanket sleepers, right? And so they had a lot of warm things on them, but I went running out into the family room and I unzipped that tent, and I was hit with this whoosh of hot air, and the kids were sleeping on top of their sleeping bags going, because they were so hot, and it was cold in our house. So this really works. Take this with you, right? Put this in the back of your head so that you know this when you go have a power outage. The next thing is to dress warmly. Now, this is a no-brainer if you live in Utah, right? But one of the problems with the polar vortex created is that the people in Texas that are used to living in this really warm environment, many of them didn't even have warm winter coats. They didn't know how to dress for extreme cold. So this is basics, right? You have a base layer, which is just to wick the moisture away from your body. And then you have a mid layer, which is supposed to insulate and help you retain the body heat. And then the outer layer, which is a shell and protects you from weather. Now, make sure dressing in layers, it's really good because if you start to get warm, you can take off some. If you get cold, you can put more on. One of the other things that I learned from our little experiment is to wear a hat. And the story is, okay, I'm just a bad person. I was so cold and I called John at work and I said, look, I've done it for 2 days. I'm done. And he said, put on a hat. Now, seriously, if he would have been here, he probably wouldn't have been alive today. I was cold and I was not happy. And I felt that my sacrifice should be duly noted because he was in a heated office and I was suffering at home.
I turned off the heat.
In the center of a building. How cold can it get? Anyway, beyond that, putting on a hat made all the difference in the world. It really made me feel warmer. So make sure that you're wearing gloves and keep your feet covered, right? At least with nice warm socks, if not with slippers or shoes or something, even inside the house. But wear that hat. Covering your neck, also you have a lot of heat loss through the neck. So just think about these things, right? Then be proactive and socialize. Yeah, it's really cold. And if you get up and move, you're going to be warmer. Also emotionally, it was very dark and depressing, and that is not good for life. And so the more active you are, the more that you socialize and play games or, check on your neighbors, do all these kinds of things, you will just be so much happier and you'll be able to weather the storm better. And don't underestimate the power of warm drinks and hot foods. And we'll talk about emergency cooking inside in just a little while. But if you can warm yourself from the inside out, that makes a really big difference. Now let's get into safe alternative heat sources a little bit. And man, there is a price range, right? And we'll get into some of the more expensive things, but everybody needs to be able to stay warm. And this is one of the least expensive ways that you can stay warm. These are just little tea lights. You can pick them up just about anywhere, at any grocery store, or Walmart carries them, IKEA carries them. And we have this can, I believe it was a nut can. I don't remember what it was originally, but it's a metal can with a plastic lid. And I store the tea lights in a plastic bag. The reason they're in a plastic bag is because otherwise they wiggle around too much and it kind of makes a mess. So I put the plastic bag of tea lights in there and I store matches in there also. And then when you need it to warm you up, you just put tea lights in the bottom and light them. And okay, it doesn't provide a tremendous amount of warmth, but it sure is good to warm your hands, right? And same thing, if you read those comments from that video, the 6 life-saving tips or whatever, or the lessons learned in Texas, people were doing things like this, and they talked about just how much warmer they were and what a blessing it was. So you can buy an entire like bucket full, a 5-gallon bucket full of tea lights for not very much money, and they're safe to store in your house. It is a flame, and flame is always dangerous, but look at this video, emergency fuel candles, and it talks about both lighting and heating with it and goes into it in greater detail. Another very inexpensive option is to use something called safe heat. Now, not all canned heat can be used indoors. You need to make sure that you use the right kind. Safe heat is made by Sterno, and it is, the cheapest place to get it is at Sam's Club. If you know anybody that has a Sam's Club card, in their catering section, they have it. So, but it turns out to be a little bit over $1 a can, and the cans will burn for 6 hours. Very safe to store indoors. But we just use these portable camp stoves, and you can use it as a cooker, but you can also use it as a heater just by putting a small terracotta pot on top, and then you put a little piece of anything that's not flammable. We just used a little piece of foil, and you put another pot on top. And the heat, it doesn't provide any more heat to the room than that original can would if you just opened it, right? But it's a little bit safer in the fact that the open flame is inside of there. But it's a wonderful place to kind of warm your hands. Now, if you touch that pot, it's going to burn you. I mean, it's hot. You can see it's 428 degrees, but it just makes a really nice area that has some localized heat. And that video down there, that's lessons from a Texas storm. There was somebody who was using these terracotta pots there, and they talk about it in the comment section. You should probably talk about the buddy heaters.
The buddy heaters are a great way to go. These are little portable heaters. Normally, you're going to run these off of the little 1-pound cylinders. If you're going to run them off the large cylinders, the 20-pound cylinders, that cylinder should be outside, and you can run a hose through a window and then insulate over that. But however you use this, they're just a really nice portable supply of heat. You can take it to the bathroom with you when you do your shower. You might want to tell them about your
my little hypothermia experiment.
Yeah.
So when we turned off our power, we still had natural gas. So I had a warm shower, right? And do you think I stayed in that shower for a long time? Yes, a very long time. But eventually I had to get out, and I had long hair, and I realized the house was cold and I couldn't use a blow dryer. I didn't have any way to really dry my hair. And so, I just did the best I could with a towel, and I just was shaking and shaking. And pretty soon I just couldn't control it. And I realized that I had hypothermia. And so I went over to a neighbor's house and sat in front of their fire until I warmed up and my hair dried with all my little kids. And then we went back home. But it was a really good experience for me in the fact that I had no clue that I could even get hypothermia indoors. And anyway, so the little buddy heater became my friend. It was definitely my friend.
So these little buddy heaters are just a tremendous asset if you can get them. They work extremely well. They have an oxygen sensor so that if that oxygen level gets low, and that has to be below 7,000 feet in elevation. And all this is, in the instructions, but these are just a tremendous, this is probably our favorite alternate heater source.
Yeah, the portable one.
Well, that and our wood stove.
Yeah, so it's my favorite portable one. Okay, now I'm going to ask you though, when you store your propane, you need to store it safely. Do not fill your basement with propane. That is not a good plan, right? You need to store it safely. We have links to some videos, or we don't have links here, but we have videos on our website, and just store it safely. Go there for some really good information. Do not exceed legal limits, but this is it's a really good thing.
And the propane, the biggest danger with the propane is that it is heavier than air. So if it's in your home and it leaks, it's going to find a low spot in your home. It doesn't dissipate like natural gas. And so that is the reason that that big tank should be outside if you're using that.
Yeah, just please be so careful. Don't make things worse than they already are. Now, this stove on the left is my cook stove, and this is what we have in our house. And after our experience with the little self-imposed power outage, we moved. And when we were building this new house, the first thing that I had put in was this wood burning stove. Like the walls weren't even finished framing, and I had this stove put in because I didn't ever want to be that cold again. It has an oven and a water reservoir. It's a really cool thing. It's also a pricey thing, and some places you cannot have a wood burning stove. But for me, this is just a huge blessing because I can cook on it as well as use it as a heater. Now, one of my friends, the photo on the right is from her house, and this is her wood burning stove, but she uses it all winter long because they don't have a furnace or any other type of heating besides little electric heaters that they plug in the wall. And so this will do a really good job, right, of providing emergency heating if that's something that you can do. Now, back to the masonry heaters. These are incredible because you explained how it works to them.
Well, the masonry heaters are working off a principle of mass. And so as we've been learning about these, you are going to have maybe 1 or 2 fires a day in these. You build a big fire in there, and then all that heat circulates through channels and is embedded into all this mass. And then the radiant heat just keeps the house warm. In many cases, it'll just keep the house warm all day. In some cases, if it's a very cold time or in a very drafty house, maybe you'd have a fire in the morning and a fire at night. But this is just another option, and using all that mass, and the emissions from these they're very clean as opposed to the wood stoves. The burn here is very hot and very clean. And so this may be an option for you.
Yeah, you will not see any smoke coming out of the chimney. The other thing that I really like about this is that stove on top, or that oven on top. So an hour after you do the fire, it is pizza oven temperature. It's super hot, right? And then a few hours later, it'll bake between 300 and 400 degrees. And then it'll act as a slow cooker for the rest of the time. So it's just an amazing thing. I'm not quite sure why we don't have more of these in the United States, but we went to somebody's house that was nearby us that we were like, when we first discovered these, we decided, okay, we got to go find somebody who really has this. And they are off grid, and they only make this, he said, once a day.
Once a day.
They make fire once a day, and that is how they heat their house. They do have one upstairs and they have one downstairs, but it's an option. It's a very expensive option, right? This is something that not everybody can afford, but Tempcast is a fantastic company. If you use the code Provident, they'll give you $250 off. But even just going to their website, tempcast.com, they kind of teach you how the principles of how this works, and definitely worth looking into.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about emergency cooling, going from one extreme to the other extreme. And that may be our issue here in Utah. The winter storm that Texas had wouldn't really bother us. That's just every day in the winter for us. It was bad for them. Our equivalent situation would be a 107 degrees for 2 weeks, a heat wave that would drive us to have problems and perhaps take down our grid as well. And so that's the high temperature. I looked that up this morning. The high temperature ever recorded in Salt Lake City was 107 degrees, 117 if you're in St. George. But if we had that weather for a week or two, we would have some serious problems too. And so there are some things that we can do to help keep ourselves cool. One of the things that I really like is these little portable fans. And the one on the left, well, we'll get into that in just a minute, but these are 2 portable fans that we found just online, and they're not very expensive. The one on the left is a camping fan, they call it, and you can hang it on a rope. It's got light. You can see the LED lights that come out that you can have the lights on, the fan on, or both on. And the one on the right, isn't solar powered, but it has a fairly large battery in it, and it's USB driven. And so you can see the solar power on the one on the left. So you can just charge that all morning and then use that during the day, during the afternoon when it's hot. And sometimes just that moving air really helps. If you add to that maybe a little spritzer bottle that you can just spray yourself a little bit, and then that fan, that helps to cool you down a lot. The one on the right, as I mentioned, just has the battery. It's charged by USB. So if you have a little solar panel, or you could even charge it from the other little unit, but you can charge that up, and they have really impressive run times. And so this is just a couple of options that you could use. We also just recently in the last week came across this company, Western Harmonics, and they build fans that are run off of solar panels. And so instead of the normal 120 volt system, these run off a 12 volt solar panel. So you can see the cord there, you run that cord outside, you can have that fan inside. And this is a large 20-inch fan, and it blows a lot of air. So, you know, there are some options out there. If you look out there, there's some things that would help make this better. Obviously, you want to make sure that you have lots of water stored. We've already talked about water storage. Heat illnesses can be extremely severe, you know, just as severe as, you know, freezing kinds of things. Frostbite and those kinds of things. So you need to protect against those. Find the ways to be cool. And we're going to have a video coming out in the next couple of weeks to help address this. So watch for that video. But you can do things like going into your basement. Your basement's usually going to be cooler than your upstairs. Find the ways that you can stay cool. Another one that we use a lot is just opening our windows. Once the temperature outside is cooler than the indoor temperature, you want to bring that cool air in and cool down the mass of your home. So whatever it takes, just make sure you do that so that you can stay cool, and watch for that video coming.
Isn't he a cute little boy?
One of my favorite pictures. We're going to talk just a little bit about sanitation. In the event of a long-term power outage, you may not have running water and you may not have a working sewer. Now, these are kind of extreme things that we don't even think about because we are so spoiled, if you will. We pretty much take these things for granted, that we can just always turn on a tap and we get water and we can flush the toilet and it takes it all away.
But they had those issues in Texas. Like at first they were okay, and they had, well, and not everybody, it was dependent on where you were, but before too long, they didn't have water. And so they no longer had the ability to flush their toilets. And there were a lot of interesting comments about how cold it was to try and go outside.
Right. So these are things to think about. We talked before about our newbie prepper series. We have a newbie prepper step 3, which is on sanitation. And we have other videos and articles on sanitation. Now is the time to learn about this and figure these things out, because there are ways to handle all these things. But again, we don't want to be trying to figure that out in the middle of a crisis.
And this is a home toilet, right? This is our toilet. And what we've done in this photo is there's actually a bag taped inside there. So the person can come in here and do their duty and still be sitting on the normal toilet where they're comfortable. And there's more about that in the videos.
Right. Creating a little simple hand washing station. And then you're going to want to take that water in the orange tub and use that for something. Water will be very valuable, and your ability to save that water and use it for something will be important. Maybe it goes into a load of wash if you had to do some clothes washing or something.
Or flush the toilet with it, or water something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, now emergency cooking. This is so much fun. There's one of those cinnamon rolls again. Yeah.
I stoked the furnace or the little wood stove just a little too much, but that's how we learn, right? We make these mistakes and then we know, okay, I did that wrong and now I know how to do it right. And so we learn. That's part of the process.
The important thing is to learn now, while you can still go to Wendy's or wherever and food is cheap and you can get more. The time not to learn is when that's the only thing you have to eat. So, oh, I'll let Jonathan do the safety thing
yes,
first.
I am the safety officer. And I have to put this lecture in so many things, but it's so important. We don't want to be in a crisis and then make that crisis worse by doing something inappropriate. And we saw that happening in Texas. People were in their garages trying to get warm in their cars, but they didn't open the garage door or pull the car out like they should have. People asphyxiated, using things that they shouldn't use where they shouldn't have used them. Safety first, don't take chances. Have fire extinguishers and smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. You can tell them about this.
Okay, so one of the things that you should never do is use charcoal inside your house because it produces massive amounts of carbon monoxide. So even if you have a fireplace, don't use it in there, right? It's just not safe. So this, I know you can't see it, but we have these like an apple box charcoal reflector oven, and you can put charcoal in it and you can use it as an oven. They're really cool. But all I had to do to get this photo was put the carbon monoxide detector right in front of the little air intake there. And within just a couple seconds, it was beeping, and obviously it exceeded the maximum amount that it will read out. But the other thing that's really important is make sure that you have these carbon monoxide detectors. We highly recommend that you get one with a digital readout. And the reason why is because carbon monoxide detectors have a certain threshold, and that's when they go off. But you can have these low levels of carbon monoxide building up over time, and you might not even know about it, but this will register, right? And so we just highly recommend, this is battery operated. We keep a couple of them around. Anytime I am cooking with some type of fuel in the house, that little baby is somewhere nearby because I want to make sure that I'm keeping my family safe. So another crazy thing that we did is we went for 30 days. It was during the month of November, so it even encompassed Thanksgiving dinner, and that was quite a little feat, but no electricity or natural gas for cooking. So that meant that we had to use all of our alternative stuff for an entire month. And it was funny because the thing that was, I mean, we have all this stuff and we know how to use it. But the thing that was really interesting is that I had a hard time timing dinner. Normally it's like, okay, it's 5 o'clock tonight and that's when we're eating. And we've got something planned at 5:30. So everybody has to get out the door. And suddenly everything was taking longer. And I was having a difficult time timing things in our normal life. So at the end of this, we did a video about the grid down cooking lessons and what we learned and how much fuel we consumed during this process. So it was a really good thing. And in addition to like the weekly videos, we really learned a lot. So we're going to share a little bit of that with you today. One of the things that's really important is something called retained heat cooking or thermal cooking. If you haven't ever heard that before, the concept is that you bring the food up to temperature, right? So if you have a pot of soup, it's a rolling boil, and then you insulate that pot so that it can continue cooking at a slower rate until it's done.
Basically like a slow cooker.
Yeah, basically like a slow cooker without any electricity being,
no more
used.
fuel being added. Yeah.
So on the left, that is a cook and carry. Sometimes you can get them under the name of shuttle chef or thermal cookers. We have found, quite frankly, that the ones that are a little bit more expensive perform better. Yeah. But if you have a cheaper one, you just wrap it, put it all in there and wrap it in a blanket, and you've got your additional insulation that you need. But the carrots are in a pot, and that pot actually was brought to temperature using some type of heat, right? Whether you do it on a propane stove or your regular stove or whatever, you bring it up to heat, and then there's a metal lid that goes on it also. And then that top closes and it just continues cooking. And it's really cool because you can take it all kinds of places with you. And that's really nice. If you don't have something like that, you can do something like use an ice chest, line it with blankets, right? The trick is you want at least 4 inches of insulation on each side. And inside that blanket, there's a pot that has been wrapped up, and we'll close that lid. Now, if you do this for a long time, I noticed that the ice chest actually started to split a little bit. I think it likes cold things better than it likes the warm things, but you can do it. We first did it with a cardboard box, right? It's the insulation that matters. And there's a whole video on that. So I'll leave that one alone now, but retained heat, cooking magic, it really is a good way to save fuel so that you can make it through whatever you have. Another thing is alcohol. Okay, alcohol is safe. Well, I want to say it's safe to burn indoors, but it is an open flame, and an open flame is never really safe. But good forms of alcohol don't produce large amounts of carbon monoxide as long as there is enough oxygen for complete combustion, right? You have to have enough oxygen in the room. And we did this really cool video comparing the different kinds of alcohol and how well they cook. So you might want to check that out. But just really quickly, denatured alcohol is fantastic. It is a really clean burning fuel. It's available. You can get it in the camping section or in the paint section of stores. And it's inexpensive. Everclear, which you can get at the liquor store, is fabulous to burn. But it's really expensive.
Yeah,
it's really expensive. Now, isopropyl alcohol is something that you can get like by the pharmacy in with all the medications. It works, but it has a yellow sooty flame, and it's just not as effective. We usually try to get, instead of the 70%, we'll get the 90%, because remember, the more alcohol, the better it's going to burn. What else is in there? Well, it's water. How well does water burn? Not very well. So the 90% will work better, but you still have a yellow sooty flame, and I can smell it. So it's not my favorite, but it would work in an emergency. Safe heat, fantastic. It's, and let's go to this video or this slide. Safe heat was the other thing that we compared. And it is really seriously one of my very favorite fuels because it's contained in this little can. You can see that you purchase it in flats. You could probably purchase it individually. The Sam's Club is the cheapest place we've ever found to get it. You can also get it online, but Safe Heat is not the same thing as just canned heat. Now, I do believe Sterno makes Safe Heat, but there are forms of this so you cannot burn inside. But this is developed for caterers to keep foods warm. So it's intended to be used indoors.
And you're not going to be able to cook as fast with this. So if you're thinking, this will only take a few minutes, it takes longer. It's just the way it is, but it gets the job done. Yeah,
it's not like propane or butane. Alcohol just takes longer. It's a lower heat. And now butane stoves. Now, most butane stoves cannot be safely cooked with indoors. You have to ventilate because of their design, right? This one is made by Sterno. It is designed to be used by caterers indoors for cooking. It's also sold at Sam's Club in the catering section, and they're not usually much more money than the camping stoves.
Not much.
But there is a difference between the two. So make sure that you get, if you're intending to use it inside, get the right one. Now, one of the things that, in our 30-day challenge, I loved the stove, because it was a nice hot flame right away. Let me cook really fast. And the thing that's problematic about it is storing the canisters of butane. They're like little bombs, right? I mean, you have to be really careful how and where you store them. So just be really careful, be really thoughtful, don't blow anybody up, and don't store more of this than you need. I would not store a year's supply of butane to cook with this every day. I think that's dangerous. So my personal opinion, but you get to hear that. There's also a video that we go into detail about it. Okay, here's my little baby, my little wood burning stove. It really is a very cool device. They are expensive, but you only have to buy it once. And we actually use it a lot, right? Both just for the warmth, and it's kind of fun to cook. I love the fact that it has the water reservoir on it. But if it is possible for you to have a wood burning stove, what a great resource for emergencies, whether it's a backup heating or a backup cooking. And like I said, I know that in a lot of areas in Utah, we're just not allowed to have these anymore. So you really have to plan for something a little bit different. But if you can, and maybe you'll have to make the drive out to our house if things get really bad up there, right? And you can stay nice and warm with us. Propane. Okay, propane is such a fantastic fuel. It burns really nice and hot. And for the most part, it's very safe to store. There are legal limits of how much you can store. So make sure that you check on those. You can usually find out from your local fire department what those ordinances are. But this is a little oven and camp stove that we have, and it's really fun. The only thing I don't like about this stove is that the stove is kind of high up, and so it's a little bit challenging that way. But wow, as far as cooking, it did a really good job. In the upper left, you'll see that's a Camp Chef that we've had forever, and it still works. And we do all of our canning on it. It always hangs out right outside a patio door because that's what we use. And we don't have an air conditioner in our home. And so during the summer months, Jonathan forbids me from cooking inside. And so a lot of our food is actually cooked either in the solar oven or on that Camp Chef. But just make sure these aren't things that you can just bring inside, right? This is for outside cooking, not inside cooking. And this isn't going to help you in the middle of a winter storm, but solar cooking is amazing. And we do it all the time during the summer with great results. Now, one of the other options that's available to you is something called a rocket stove. And what a rocket stove is designed to do is it takes small sticks and twigs and pieces of debris and burns them very nice and hot and takes best advantage of the fuel. And so these are just 3 different kinds of rocket stoves. There's the Minuteman rocket stove that's in an ammo can, and that one, it cooks really well. You do have to tend it in order to keep it going. The Kelly kettle that's in the lower left-hand corner, I really like the Kelly kettle. It has a water jacket that sits on top of it, and so it'll boil the water, and it's just really nice. The only problem with it is it's just for 1 or 2 people, right? It's small. And then there's the other rocket stove that Benjamin's right there. And notice on this, we've combined 2 things. So we're using the pressure cooker on top of the rocket stove because, I'm sorry, the pressure cooker will cook much faster and use significantly less fuel. And then the rocket stove is the same, right? We're burning sticks from the trimmings of our orchard, right? From when we prune them.
And the pressure cookers that are made today are very safe. We talked to a lot of people, and no, I would never use a pressure cooker. They're too dangerous. There's stories going back to grandma and great grandma where something happened and one blew up. These are very safe, and they do a great job. It's probably should be in every prepper's arsenal to have a pressure cooker because it does cook, like dry beans, it'll cook so fast. They just save so much fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a toy that we got back. Okay, so back when we did the no cooking challenge, I had seen this at an expo, and I wanted one really bad, but it was just out of our price range. And so we actually, before this 30-day challenge, we called Dan that makes Bear River rocket stoves, and I said, can I just borrow one for a month, right? You'll get some good advertising. Can I just borrow it? And so we did, we drove and we brought this back so that we could borrow it. And after using it for a month, I had to buy it. I told John, I can't send this back. And the reason why is because it's got this huge oven, right? And it uses very little fuel. It's got these rockets that you have to feed and this huge grill. It's outside only. But what we were thinking is we could feed in our entire neighborhood, right? We could stoke this thing and everybody could bring over whatever it is they had to cook and cook on it. And it's another blessing, right? A blessing to the community kind of thing. So I don't know if Dan has any of these left, but it's just a fantastic design. Okay, now charcoal. There's a lot of people who do Dutch oven cooking, and charcoal stores so safely. Remember, a lot of the fuels don't store safely, but charcoal and wood, man, you can store those forever and you're not going to blow anybody up. And so there's a video we created all about charcoal and how much charcoal to store and how to use it and all that kind of stuff. But you can use it in the traditional Dutch oven, like what you see us cooking with here. There's an EcoQ grill that also you can use charcoal in it, but you could also use debris and cook with it. And then there's this little cob cooker that's just designed to very efficiently use the charcoal. And it's got, you can saute things, and it's got a grill on it. It's a good little device. So pretty much, as we're looking at the cooking aspect of it, you want to be able to safely cook. You need to be able to cook indoors as well as outdoors, right? And let me tell you, the people in Texas didn't want to go in their backyard and cook. So something like the Safe Heat or a butane stove that was rated for indoor use would have been such a blessing for some of them to be able to use. Or actually the wood stove would be the ultimate blessing, but not, everybody isn't in a situation where they can have one of those. So we have to work within whatever parameters we have.
Right.
And never function off of fear, right? We're always operating in faith and sensible decisions and not doing things because we're afraid.
So no power, no problem. But one of the keys here is the practice. You've got this if you've practiced. Just practice. Do some of these things to learn about these things, find out what's going to work well for you, and then practice and make sure you know how to use it. And then practice occasionally just to make sure that you don't forget how to use that.
Yeah, and that you're
just,
and you have all the right pieces, right? That you're not missing something important. Okay, I loved that commercial at the beginning where they're bored and they say, what can we do? Let's practice emergency preparedness. Well, yeah, put this into your regular life, right? Go outside a little more often and have a barbecue outside, or those portable fire pits. Those are really good for practicing different emergency preparedness stuff and yet making it a fun family event. Right? It's all about everybody needing to know, because can your family take care of themselves if you're not there? Do they know where the supplies are, and are they skilled at using them, or are we going to have issues because they try but mom and dad aren't around?
So this is not something that should take over your lives. And sometimes people think that
you made it take over my life.
Well, we're different. For most of us, this should not take over our life. This is a little thin slice that we're asking you to add. We have important things to do in our communities, in our schools, in our churches, wherever we're congregating, whatever we're doing, there's good things to do. This is just a little slice that you can put into your life that brings tremendous peace of mind and allows you to be part of the solution. It allows you to help not only yourself and your family, but your neighbors and your community. And we are huge proponents of community, helping the community, working together. Together we can get through anything.
Yes, I totally believe that. And not everybody has to have everything, right? If we have a network of people that we can share and we can bless their lives, just like that Bear River rocket stove, right? That's not just for our family. That is so that we can be better community members.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm doing it. Okay, so our YouTube channel, The Provident Prepper, subscribe to it so that you get the notifications on the new videos that we make. Share it with people that need to know. Our whole goal is to bless our community and help us all become better prepared in safe and reasonable ways. And then we have the providentprepper.org, our website that has a lot of really good information on it. And it also has those action plans up at the top menu. You can see there's a little place with action plans. If you click on it, there's an action plan for every chapter in our book. You don't have to buy the book at all to be able to use those action plans, but it'll like take water storage and kind of walk you through, okay, what kind of water, what size container, how many people do I have, how many animals do I have that I need to plan for, all that kind of stuff so that you can develop your plan. And then we have our book that we wrote, The Provident Prepper. It's a really good book. We wrote it so that I could have a resource for myself. I'm like, the whole time I'm writing, I'm thinking, if I needed this, You know, I still flip it open and turn to different pages to access stuff. So it's a good resource. But if you cannot afford it, we will, I'm sure in a couple months, our publisher about every 6 or 7 months lets us give it away for free, Kindle version on Amazon. And so we'll post a video when we're able to do that. And it's usually like a 3 or 4 day period of time, and you could totally download it for free, you know, no strings attached, nothing. And we just want this information out in our community.
And again, that was the purpose of this book, is we had so many people saying, you know, it's just all too big for me. I don't even know where to start. And so what we did was broke it down, and that's what the action plans do as well. It breaks it down into bite-sized pieces so that you can look at it and say, okay, I can make progress here and here. We talked about those little steps. Little steps are what will get you there if you have clarity and you have the focus to know where to go, and you're not just so confused and overwhelmed by it all. It can be overwhelming, but it doesn't need to be. Break it down and make it manageable.
And you don't have to have a lot of money to be able to prep. There are ways to do it very, very inexpensively. And there's ways to make it cost a lot of money, and all the places in between. So, you know, there's no excuse. We can help you however you need help. So if you need to talk to us, we on our website, if you scroll down, there's a contact us page. Just click on it and send us a note, and we will email you back. But we appreciate all that you're doing, and thank you so much for being part of the solution.
Yep.
Thank you for being here today. That was wonderful information, as was class 1 today. And I do have some questions for you. So let's take just a second. Back on sanitation, what's the best way to dispose of that plastic bag from the toilet bowl after it's filled?
Okay, so plastic bags will leak. So you take a bucket, you put the plastic bag in the bucket, right, to transport it out. And it all depends on what's happening in your situation and what your local authorities are telling you to do. It would be really nice if we had a garbage man that was just going to come and pick all that up, that you could just dispose of it inside of your normal garbage. If you don't have a situation like that, you really might have to dig a hole and bury it. But if you have high water tables, you need to worry about who's downstream from you, right? And so there's a whole lot of things involved in that, and every situation is so very different. So, you know, optimally, I'd like to just store it for a little while and send it away with the garbage man.
And if it's the middle of winter, you're probably going to have a hard time digging a hole, but
it will freeze solid.
Bucket, it's just going to freeze into a solid mass. So, you know, if it's a summer and you have to dig a hole, you might have to dig a hole. And again, you know, we have to be sensitive to our neighbors and to our environment. We need to make sure we're not putting that into a place where that's running into a water supply or something. But yeah, we're talking about difficult situations, and you're going to have to make the best of each situation.
And they do make something, I want to call, I think it's called a WAG bag, but they're biodegradable, and they're meant to go in, what are the bucket toilets called? I can't think of the name. It's a bucket toilet, right? A Lugabaloo. They're meant to go in something like that. They have a powder in it. It's called poo powder, and it solidifies the liquids and makes it actually so that it can't spread germs, right? And then when you bury the WAG bag, that is biodegradable, and it will all eventually just go away safely. So if you have the financial resources to buy some of those and put those aside, that's fantastic. You can find them at sporting goods stores, right? They're used by backpackers and things like that, and campers. So there's a great way to do that if you do have those resources.
Great. All right, we're running out of time here, so just a couple more questions. So are you saying, this is on the Mr. Heater portable heater, are they completely safe indoors, or do you need to open a window for ventilation, which would therefore defeat the purpose of heat when you're using Mr. Heater?
That's a great question. Yes, they are safe for indoor use for the combustion portion of it. You do need to supply a little bit of oxygen, because obviously it needs oxygen for combustion. You do need to supply a little bit of air, especially if you're going to be doing it for a while, because it will consume some of that air. And if your house is really tight, you will need to open a window just a little bit. And you're right, it seems counterintuitive. Okay, well, we're going to open a window so we can supply fresh air for the heater that we're trying to use, and it all but you don't need that window open very far to let in that replacement air, but you do need to provide for some replacement oxygen.
And part of it depends on the size of your house. Are you in a very small apartment? Or do you have a larger house that, that has higher ceilings? Do you have more oxygen? Do you have kids that are running out of the door every hour and providing you with ventilation, right? Every situation is just so different, but you do need oxygen for complete combustion.
Awesome, thanks. And then the last question, where do you recommend storing smaller bottles or canisters of the butane and propane? Is the garage okay?
The rule of thumb is don't store anything like that and anything you can't afford to have burned down.
Oh,
That's the rule of thumb.
The ideal place, and there's usually just not an ideal place, but the ideal place would be in a shop or a garage that's separated from the house, that doesn't get overly hot. And sometimes that's hard. This is one of the real challenges is, where do I store this fuel? Where can I store it safely? They make cabinets that help with that. The fuel storage cabinets, they're very expensive, but that is one option that you could use. But yeah, a detached garage or shed is probably the ideal place. But again, you want to make sure that's safe from little kids, and again, that's one of the challenges with all this is solving these little problems.
Okay, and I'll tell you how we have solved that little problem, and it's not that you should solve it this way because I'm not sure it's the best way, but we have a case of the butane bottles that's still in its original plastic wrap in its box, and it's in our garage. Our garage is an insulated garage, but that is where we store that. We store our propane out in a what do you call it? It's an outbuilding.
Yes, out in the
and in the original canisters, right, out of sunlight. So that's what we do to solve that problem.
And they may want to check with their city municipality ordinances and things like that as well.
Right.
Yes, and the best place, your local fire station will be able to give you your local ordinances. And please don't ever store anything that is out of legal ramification, right? You want to stay within the law. And the thing to think about is if you do, it is possible if you have a problem, your insurance company may not pay,
right? Because
you have done something against. So you might want to call whoever handles your homeowner's insurance and make sure what their guidelines are.
Yeah, highly likely they won't. John and Kylene, thank you so much for your information today. There just never is enough time. Wade, I'll throw this back to you, but thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you again, Jonathan and Kylene. Excellent information. Thank you for sharing your expertise, your experiences with us and some of your time this afternoon. And I think that's been very beneficial for everyone here watching this today. So that takes us into our next break. And we do have another little short video we want to show you in this break as well. We'll begin at the top of the hour, 3 o'clock with our next session, Home Hazard Hunts for Earthquake Safety by two very expert earthquake experts. But this is the 15th anniversary of Be Ready Utah this year. It was created 15 years ago. And so we wanted to kind of commemorate that by interviewing the creator of Be Ready Utah and posting that video as one of our Be Ready Utah prepcasts, which are available on our Be Ready Utah YouTube channel. If you want to go watch any of our Be Ready Utah prepcasts or video podcasts, they are available there at youtube.com/BeReadyUtah. But we have one that we just finished, a portion of it. Actually, we just finished the shooting of it, and we have a little teaser we're going to show you right now. We're very excited about this 15th anniversary of Be Ready Utah. So Brian, our technical director, go ahead and show that video, please. Welcome to this special edition of the Be Ready Utah Prepcast. I'm Wade Matthews, the Be Ready Utah manager for the Utah Division of Emergency Management. Joining me today in the State of Utah Emergency Operations Center is former Utah Governor Gary Herbert, the founder of Be Ready Utah, on this, the anniversary of the program.
Thank you for joining me, Governor.
Well, thank you, Wade, and happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. Yes, today is the day, April 6th, 15 years ago, Be Ready Utah was founded, and it was your idea. So can you tell us a little bit about where did you get that idea?
Well, I can remember it well. It was when I was lieutenant governor. My friend, the lieutenant governor of Louisiana, Mitch Landrieu, invited us, other lieutenant governors, and there's about 2 or 3 of us that went, to come and take a look at the devastation that occurred after Hurricane Katrina and Rita in New Orleans. People maybe remember that. It was very devastating. Over 2,000 homes, destroyed or damaged. And of course, New Orleans is below sea level. And so they got these dikes, and they were pierced and filled up like a bathtub.
Yes, I think it was the largest disaster in the United States up to that point.
I think so, and maybe pretty close to the largest even today. It was massive, and we went there, and he took us up in a Black Hawk helicopter. We flew around, we saw the devastation, and then I had a chance to talk to Mitch and say, what happened, what didn't happen. And the bottom line was people were not ready, they were not prepared. And the government wasn't prepared. They were hoping the federal government was going to come and give them relief. And of course, that did not happen very well. And so I came back, and out of that experience said, we need to make sure that we are prepared for whatever. Earthquake, fire, flood, economic downturn. People have asked me about the Be Ready Utah. Be ready for what? Well, fill in the blank. There's probably a lot of options that can fit in there. And so we developed in the Be Ready Utah program out of that event that happened in New Orleans, prompting us to become prepared and Be Ready Utah.
All right, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Governor Herbert. And to see the full episode of that, again, you may want to follow Be Ready Utah on Facebook, where we will post the premiere of the full episode of that. And then again, it will be available on the Be Ready Utah YouTube channel, the full episode. That was just a little sneak peek there, talking with Governor Herbert about his creation of Be Ready Utah. So with quite a legacy, and it continues today to do a lot of good in helping people learn about emergency preparedness and take action towards emergency preparedness. So we have about 3 more minutes left in this break. Again, at 3 o'clock, we will hear from Marilyn Hoff and Jeff Johnson, 2 very well informed earthquake experts about home hazard hunts and earthquake preparedness. So stay tuned for that.
Hey, hope you're liking our Be Ready Utah Prepcasts. Have a question about anything emergency preparedness? Contact us on Twitter or Facebook at Be Ready Utah with hashtag BRUPrepcast or in the comments on YouTube. We'd love to answer it on the next episode of the Be Ready Utah Prepcast. Please share these videos and your own adventures in preparedness with your friends, family, neighbors, and coworkers. Remember, anytime is a good time to talk about emergency preparedness.